have to pee in a podcast.
Oh, pee in a podcast.
Because I just went pee, and then we do a podcast.
Sponsored by Conquest.
Sponsored by Conquest Funds.
There you go.
All right. So, let's start off with, what's the worst business situation you've been in?
Oh, geez. Situation?
And how did you overcome it? And did you rely on other people, or did you have to hone in on yourself and do it yourself?
Interesting. Great question. So, one of the things that you asked me a few weeks ago was what like hasn't worked out, and I had mentioned like investing in other people, giving other people the control, things that we've controlled, we've just succeeded at. And I know other people have made money investing in other people, I just haven't. And those have been painful for me. But we got looped in with a developer who, by all accounts, was successful. He knew the terms of development. He was actually very helpful. He got great pricing on things. And I got to know the guy really well. And we lent him money on a couple deals, and he knocked it out of the park. Like, probably the best guy we had ever lent money to. And then we had done a loan for him on a permitted piece of land. He was going to raise equity or sell it or whatever, and ultimately turned to us for the equity. And, I turned to the folks who had been my investors, and basically we put this deal together, and, I'll just say that I think this person was in over their heads financially and made some decisions related to being in over his head that were really tough to uncover. By the time I uncovered them, it was too late. So we had to go into this building in Sharon and get it evaluated, a forensic framing audit, which ultimately led us to having to tear it down, which ultimately led us to have to overspend to rebuild it, which ultimately led us to being set a couple $1 million under budget because we accepted his budget. I mean, it was really a whole bunch of, I guess you could tie it all back to the same thing, is we're investing in someone else and trusting them to do the right thing. As I've said to you before, there's no good deals with bad people. And I think this person, maybe they weren't always bad, but they turned into a bad person. So having to step into a project that basically had to be completely torn down and redone was the most difficult decision. And then the phone calls that I had to make, telling people who trusted me and him with their capital, which obviously we take very seriously, that there was a significant problem, was brutal. How did we overcome it? A lot of faith, a lot of tears, literally, and just a commitment to the thing that I signed my entire life up to do, and just sort of realized that it made me feel really good about myself, knowing that everybody else probably would have quit, and I just chose not to. And then I had people rally behind me. The investor group was upset, obviously, but they gave me the grace and latitude to fix it. I involved them right away. And I would say that, and then I did another project with the same person at the same time, went upside down. And, same sort of thing. I stuck with it for as long as possible and did everything we could to bring these situations to pass, even if they were ultimately result in a capital loss. I never quit, irrespective of how much money I was not making. As you know, we've got, maybe I didn't tell you, but we've got 2 deals. CSLF, the lending company, and then this project in Old Post that I have. CSLF, I've been running since late 2016, and I have not personally earned $1 since 2016. And we've done probably in those 4 years close to $100 million in loans with CSLF. I've not made $1, not a management fee, nothing. On Old Post, once we took over in 2017, late 2017, I think we had to pay some sort of construction management fee, or at least it made sense per the documents. But since 2017, I've not made one penny on 635 Old Post, and we've had resources out there and everything else. So at some juncture in my life, I just put personal income to the side, and that's where I think a lot of growth that we've had and a lot of long-term thinking was developed, is I didn't care about personal income. And I think that's why every terrible thing that ever happened to me, every single adversity, which took in those two deals I was telling you about, I was expecting to make $4 to $6 million for myself in those two deals. I had it on my board for future income kind of thing, and it completely evaporated. But guess what showed up somewhere else? Another opportunity with a bigger payout and long-term gratification and joy, right? So anything that's ever been taken away from me, I learned to realize that even though development income might have been taken away from me, that hospitality income was coming to me, typically greater than the thing that I lost. And once I really believed that, that started in my late 20s, it made me say, well, guess I got to write that income off, and then I just watch it come from somewhere else. That's poetic. That's why business for me is so personal and so spiritual, because that type of thing is poetic. If I said, I'm going to empty your bank account, you son of a gun, I stole all your money, being able to do nothing to me, being able to believe in a higher power, and then watch twice as much money get dropped into your bank account from something else. I've lived my life that way for years. It's a struggle at first, by the way. At first, you don't want to do that, but then ultimately, that's where you wind up, and that's where the solution comes. That's without fail. It's never not happened. Any adversity we've ever had, it has never not been the result.
Just take time.
Mm-hmm.
So with a company with more than one owner, how do you go about making decisions and dividing up the work?
So, good question. I think I'll answer it by saying my life has migrated to having no business partners. And certainly no business partners that have decision-making authority. And the reason why isn't because I think I'm smarter than anybody, or I have a willingness to die on my own sword. I have a willingness to die by my own decisions. I feel very uncomfortable falling on someone else's sword or dying or a business failing because of somebody else's poor decisions or decisions that they made given their life experience that I wouldn't make given my life experience. That I could have probably saved things that other people will ultimately die on, and I've got to go down with the ship. That's just not my DNA, you know? The only business partner I want to have is God and Tracy. So how do you go about making decisions? In those situations, like Fit Factory, obviously I had partners. The original lending company, I had partners. Old Post, I had partners. Columbia Retail, and I don't really have partners. I have investors and whatnot, but they really do give me good grace. That's been a good development. I mean, that's been a good, I think, investment for everybody. North Attleboro Shopping Center kind of had partners at the beginning. Now we sort of get to make the decisions. So I would say number one is you've got to have diplomacy. If you try to jam your ideas down other people's throats, it just isn't going to work. And you can try to manipulate it as, you know, I'm so committed to what I'm doing that I'm just going to jam this down their throat until they say yes. That just doesn't work, actually. You know, that strategy just doesn't work. There's a difference between tact and tenacity. And I think tenacity means somebody who keeps showing up at your door with a product, with a new strategy, with grace and humbleness. That's tenacity. I mean, that's actually tact. That's using tenacity to have tact. But sometimes people misinterpret what tenacity is, and they're just saying, well, I'm tenacious. I don't take no for an answer. So you do what I say. And it's like, that actually just doesn't work. So I think empathy, starting with empathy, trying to understand why somebody else's position might be different than yours. Trying to look at a situation through their eyes or through their lens and then interpreting it to the best of your ability, and then suggesting what your decision would be if it's different than theirs, right? So it's this constant like game, which ultimately kind of comes down to respect. You know, if you respect your business partners, you'll know that they're not coming from a selfish position, and they'll hopefully know you're not coming from a selfish position, and that can ultimately allow the right decision to be made. So in short, how do you do it? I think you give respect to the other person's opinion, even if you don't agree with it. I think you try to believe that the other person is generally suggesting what they really do think is best, which is really no different than what you think is best, even though your direction might be different. And I think that's the best way that I've been able to kind of sort of impose, if you will, my decisions on groups of people, is trying to understand where they're coming from, relay to them my experience, and then relay to them my solution, right? That's the best way to do it. And it doesn't always work. I mean, as you know, I don't participate in Fit Factor anymore. It just didn't work. Whatever, you know, Matt's choice of direction for that company and the way that company got to that place that it wanted to get to, we want to get to the same place. His path is different than my path. So ultimately, I was able to just kind of say, okay, you do whatever you think you need to do to get that company to where it needs to be. And same thing I told you before in the last question. I let that thing go, stop really worrying about it or trying to control it. And, you know, all the money that I don't make there, I make somewhere else.
Gotcha.
You know? Next question, sponsored by Bang Cotton Candy.
Bang Energy.
Bang Rainbow Unicorn, my bad.
Because Highball is slacking on the sponsorships.
That is true.
Until we get big, they're gonna be mad. They're gonna be mad.
They're going to be pissed. They're going to be pissed.
Next question. All right. So yesterday we talked about your due diligence on your first 41 deals that you looked at, foreclosure properties.
Mm-hmm.
One, how did you find and go about finding those properties?
Mm-hmm.
And two, how'd you go about closing those deals with the actual homeowners?
So I'll give you the first answer looking at 41 deals. Those were on MLS.
Okay.
So this was a time in 2009 when, you know, there was so many foreclosures happening. It was a pretty wild time. And as a young kid, I didn't totally understand the breadth of the situation. But that being said, I think one takeaway would be, but how do you find the 41? But not rely on a realtor. Because very rarely are you going to find a realtor that is more committed to you buying a property than you, right? So if you call a realtor and say, I have a realtor, they're going to show me all these properties. The tail can't wag the dog. The realtor is the tail. So what I did was I had been talking around and asking around and telling people what I wanted to do, and I realized there was this service called MLS, which is multi-listing service. It's like the universal platform for finding properties. When we sell properties, they go on MLS.
Yep.
And I said, well, I need access to that. And well, you got to be a realtor. And I'm like, God, I'm not a realtor. How are we going to do that? So I had a friend at the time whose buddy was a realtor who gave us the login, right? But that actually wasn't the strategy that was important. I realized at some juncture that any attorney in Massachusetts also had a broker's license, which meant if they had a broker's license, guess what they could do? Get MLS. So I had a bunch of attorneys who were friends, and I was outside of a networking event. We used to do these morning breakfasts. I think it was actually technically a B&I networking event. And this kid, Bill Sienkiewicz, nice kid, still he advertises at Fit Factory. If you've ever been in, you see it's called Sink Law, S-I-N-C. So he's got his own firm now. At the time, he worked with a guy named Dave Splain for Splain Law Offices, who, ironically, I used to sell office supplies to way back in the day. So I ended up outside of a networking event with him. I was on Galvin Boulevard in Dorchester. We're out in the middle of the street in the snow. And I'm like, dude, can I ask a random question? I know we're not that close. I know we talked about maybe buying houses sometime. I said, but would you be willing to start a real estate brokerage with me? I'll hire the people. You put up the license. I'll basically do all the work, but I really just need your license. And we'll split profits or something like that. And he just said, yeah, that sounds cool. And I'm like, let's go. So I went home and told Tracy. It was all exciting. So what we ended up doing was starting an LLC. It was called the Gadles Group LLC. Bill Sienkiewicz, Ryan Gadles were partners. And we get to use Bill's license. So we had a Gadles Group LLC company. Gadles Group LLC was a registered real estate broker in the state of Massachusetts. And that's how we got MLS access.
Gotcha.
So that was how we did it. But that was all through MLS. Today, I don't think you can see that volume of properties. So I think you got to be a lot more creative. As I've told you before, I'm looking at a location like Brockton. Dude, I'm driving up and down the streets. I'm looking at the dumpy properties and I'm leaving letters. I'm looking at the properties online. I'm calling the realtor directly. I am trying to network, go to different networking groups in that area, and I'm trying to see as many properties as I can see. So that's how I did it, but that's how I would do it today.
Gotcha.
You got to just be in the area where you want to buy stuff to start.
So how did you go about finding a property in 131 Royal Palm? Because that was a new area.
I think you asked me how I got the people to sell the properties.
Did I?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. So those were on MLS. So they were
those
for
ones.
sale. Yeah, most of the ones we bought were for sale.
What does the conversation typically look like between you and the homeowner in order to get them to?
Yeah, nothing really if it's on MLS, right? Because they want to sell. That's why it's on MLS.
Oh.
But we had a few other properties that, people were generally responding to us, right? People were generally responding to us. So the nature of the conversation we were entering was to buy the property, right? So that kind of eliminates a little bit of the tension. But what I would do now is I would say something, have you ever considered selling, 123 Main Street? No, we're not interested. Oh, okay. Well, if you were interested, what do you think it's worth? Okay, cool. Well, you know what business we're in, right? Okay, so we're in the development business, so something like that. To me, I think it's worth X once I'm all done with it. And, certainly we're in the business of trying to earn income. So we couldn't pay what you wanted, but we could pay pretty close to that. Is that something you'd, maybe be interested in if we could get close to that number? Or maybe something to the effect of, well, I can't give you that number. I can give you X less. But what if, I don't know, this is what we're going to do. This is what we think it's worth. Would you want to maybe participate in the upside? So I can't give you this today, but you'll ultimately make more than that if you take the ride with me. I would do stuff like that. But ask questions. That's my biggest thing with all the sales guys too, is just keep asking questions. Because people will tell you things if you ask them questions. How are we sitting in these seats right now? Questions.
Yeah.
Right? Questions.
Questions.
Mm-hmm. You just ask, Ask and suggest and ask, slowly. Not do you want to sell your property? How much? Say, would you consider? Have you thought about what would it be like if? Could we maybe? Those suggestive type questions. That's what I would do if I was in those conversations.
We just took over this common area.
They don't pay rent for it anyways. It's all good. Sean, go around. Jeez. How to get 131 Royal Palm? 131 Royal Palm's an interesting deal, man, because it was, as you know, I'm a pretty, well, you don't know, but he does. I'm just a pretty spiritually guided guy. I don't wake up and be like, you know what? I think I want to buy a property in Florida and be in the hospitality business. It just doesn't work like that for me. Maybe I'm not that smart or whatever. That being said, I just had this vision one day that why am I going to Florida to the boat only to relax? All these people from the Northeast are coming to Florida and becoming permanent residents. Florida's become the sexiest place in America. It's warm, there's palm trees, it's nice. Why would I not just do business here? And I said, well, what strategy works? Get a badass place, bring your people to the badass place, have your people penetrate the streets, go street by street, the same thing we do in Dallas, same thing we do in Austin, tell people we lend money, start to network in the crowd, dominate the bars and restaurants, and then that's how you build a business in an area and make an impact and make a footprint. That's always been my philosophy. So why not do that in Florida? And I said, you know what? I did a nice penthouse apartment in Dallas, and that's how we got in. Everybody knew where I lived. Everybody thought it was cool. Everybody knew my girlfriend. Everybody knew where she worked in the bar and restaurant scene, and we just picked up momentum that way. But I wasted money on rent. Not really though, because we built a several $1 million business there. Ultimately paid for itself 100 times over. But something told me to own something this time and take a crack. I want to own a $20 million house in Palm Beach. It don't happen by just buying $1 million house in Quincy. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So with that, I just felt like we wanted to own something, and I just was like, all right, well, I don't know. I got to buy something bigger than I've ever bought from a single family standpoint, and that was going to be the house. So I said, how am I going to do it? Where do I want to be? And I said, well, Palm Beach is a little too expensive from a house standpoint right now for me. I'm comfortable admitting that. And I don't want to be in Miami. Miami's just, it's too much hustle bustle, done the big city thing, don't want to do Miami. But I want to be able to lend money in Miami, and I want to be able to get there easily. And even though I'm not going to be in Palm Beach headquartered, I want to be able to get there easily, and I want to run the East Coast. That's where I want to lend money, in the East Coast of Florida. Well, the middle point is one's Delray and one's Fort Lauderdale. And I said, well, Delray is kind of up and coming, couldn't find the style houses I wanted on the water, but Fort Lauderdale had these, what I call, I don't know if they really called this, I call them the Finger Islands, and it's the most desirable place to live in Fort Lauderdale. So I said, you know what? I'm going to take a look and see where these things are. So I went to Zillow, typed in homes for sale in Fort Lauderdale, $1 million minimum price, and I got the map. And all of a sudden I saw the map. I said, dude, those are the Finger Islands, right off Las Olas, which is kind of the coolest street in Fort Lauderdale. Then I zoomed in, and I just literally clicked and looked at all the houses. $1,000 a foot, $1,000 a foot, $800 a foot, $800 a foot, $800 a foot. And then I go to Royal Palm, which I just love the name of the street, and I click on this house, which was $3.9 million, and I'm like, $519 a foot. Well, I've been in real estate long enough to know that that's a discount relative to market value. So why don't I dig in? So I click on it, and I'm looking. I'm like, 7,700 square feet, $3.9 million. If we bought it for $375 and invested $1 million into it, this thing's got to be worth close to $1,000 a foot. We're going to make a killing on it. This is what I thought. So reach out to the realtor. Total pain in the neck. Doesn't really want to respond. So then I reach out to the realtor. I set up an appointment to look at the house. The house is rented through Airbnb. It's generating like 30 grand, 25, 30 grand a month. Talk to the Airbnb realtor. So we just started getting all this data. And then ultimately, talking to the realtor, he was like, dude, they're not going to take $375. You need a full price offer. The bank's involved, blah, 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 blah. So I'm like, this is like a pre-foreclosure. But it didn't say that in the listing or anything. So I said, all right, I'll pay full price. Let's go. So I paid full price, put up a giant deposit, and just kind of rode that thing out, because it was going to fall apart probably 3 times. Then it came back together, and once I took my hands off it and just kind of let it all happen, I realized this house is supposed to be ours. And once I took my hands off the wheel, after I thought the deal was going to die, I got a call and said, hey, you got to close September 1st. And that was in like August 20th. I think I read the email to you guys in one of the meetings one day. 1 phone call, 1 text, 1 email. And that's how that played out.
Video available on Ryan Gadles' YouTube channel.
Let's go.
So you incorporated the discipleship strategy in order to enter a new market.
Totally.
Jesus strats.
Totally. Ask Derek Sanchez about that.
About what?
About the Jesus disciple strategy for business.
Actually, I have to text him.
You should, yeah.
No, yeah, I wanted to take
Yeah, the guy changed your life, for God's sakes.
Yeah, I know. I want to take him.
You owe him a steak and cheese sandwich.
I really do. I owe him
A fresh
more
one.
than
Maybe a
steak.
fresh one. Maybe a fresh one.
Maybe in like 2 years.
So you talk a lot about how one of the main characteristics is humility. How do you see / define humility? Like, if you want somebody to be humble, what would you say is humble?
I think humility is a genuine curiosity and empathy, right? So I think if I was to define humility, it would be, or I could define the characteristics of humility in a person would be a general curiosity in other people. Empathy is a genuine, in general, care for other people's situation. And that's what I think humility is. Because if you have those two things, like I can learn from you, right? 24 years old or 23 years old, and new to the business world, so to speak. But I can learn stuff from you because I don't think I know everything. You know what I mean? And if you come in with a different energy or attitude, I can say, "Ooh, I'm going to pump the brakes a little bit. And maybe there's a way that I can relate to you on the empathy side. Maybe I can help." And same thing with him is like, if I don't have humility, what can I learn from a 20-year-old who didn't even go to college, right? But when you have humility, you realize you can learn a lot from people of any age, any race, any gender, any of that stuff. And I think humility just does that. The challenge is balancing that, with having to also want to, feel big, right? Which I still have that desire to still feel big and do big things and touch big things. The way you're going to own a $5 million mansion is because at 20 you touched one. The way I know I'm going to own a plane is because at 27 or 29 or 30 or whatever I was, I just touched it. I don't need to have it now. I just need to touch it, and I need to know it's available, and I need to see the skills inside other people who've done it materially right here, not just from a book. You know what I mean?
100%.
That's how you know that happens. And I always say there was an interview with Jay-Z and Warren Buffett, and they were like, "What are your habits, Jay-Z? Like, do you go to the gym in the morning?" And he just laughs. He goes, I touched it a little bit, touched it a little bit. And I just always thought that when it came to like big stuff, it's like, I just got to touch it a little bit and realize that it is tangible and I can have it. But it's only humility that does that. If you don't have humility and a genuine and general curiosity, a genuine and general empathy for other people's situations, it's tough to do.
Would you say you come across more people that are, sort of speak, trigger happy, or people that can't seem to pull the trigger?
Good question. In our position as lenders, it's trigger happy. In life, it is can't pull the trigger. You know what I mean? So we're predisposed to people who might want to do deals, and they'll seem trigger happy. And dude, I've guided so many people to not do deals. Sometimes the best deal you do is the one you don't do. And I've guided people there, and they don't listen, and they screw themselves up. And there's other people who prove me wrong. I say the same thing every time. Hey, I might be wrong, but given A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L, M, N, O, P, Q, R, S, T, U, V, W, X, Y, and Z, I think it's a bad deal. You know what I mean? I wouldn't do it. And on the flip side, in real life, all I hear is people like, I'm going to do this, and I'm going to do that, and I'm going to do this, and I'm going to do that, and we're going to do this, and we're going to do that, and no one ever does anything. Do you know why?
Because they just don't ever pursue it.
No, because it's fucking hard. Me and my old partner, Oliver, used to have a joke, like him and his family had a big falling out. They used to own a business together. Had a big falling out, and then we built like a pretty good lending company for a while. And it dawned on me, like I watched the ease that he moved through life. And he was smart, built a big business, had good people around him generally, and just had a unique way about him. Less disciplined, I think, than I probably am. But he made it look easy. And the easier that you make it look, the more people think they can do it. Then they realize they can't do it. Then they get mad because they think they're smarter than you. I've had that happen my whole life. And then they don't do anything. That happened my whole life. Because we make it look easy. There's 12 people in that conference room all getting paychecks. That ain't easy, right? That ain't easy. There's buildings that have been bought, lawsuits that have been fought. That ain't easy. There's money that's been raised and money that's been lost. That ain't easy, right? There's nights where I spend staring at the ceiling and nights where I have beautiful night's rest. But that ain't easy, staring at the ceiling. You know what I'm saying? It's like all that stuff is what comes along with being an entrepreneur. And I think you gotta be gritty and you gotta be tough. And then once people find out that you actually have to be tough, they realize how untough they are. Additionally, people don't understand what a marathon it is. So there's been a lot of guys that we've had who do one deal. Maybe they win, maybe they lose, but like they never do another deal. Because again, it takes grit. They'd rather just go 9 to 5 somewhere, and that's fine. I mean, the world is made up of that for a reason. Entrepreneurs are generally in that kind of 1%, which is increasing now, category. Because I think there's companies like this that you can build your own business inside the company, basically. But yeah, so that's what I would say. I come across both of them equally, depending on the hat I'm wearing at the time.
And have you ever had to coach anybody kind of out of that? And like, if so, like, what have you seen works and what doesn't?
This goes against my Christian teaching, but like not everybody. Like I don't think everybody's has the ability to do something special. I don't think everybody has a calling. Again, it goes against, what we learn in Christianity, but like I actually don't think everybody has a calling. And I learned that through people who at church, week in and week out and week in and week out, would be told about the abundance, the greatness, the breadth of God, and do nothing. Say they're going to start this, and they go from one MLM to another, from Amway to Shakeology to Kiani to something else, and they can't stay with anything because people generally don't have a high level of ability to be consistent. You know what book I read this morning?
Consistency is key.
No. You know what book I read this morning?
The Greatest Salesman Alive.
And when did I start reading that book?
January.
And how many scrolls are there?
10.
And what scroll do you think I'm on?
10.
People don't do that. You know what I'm saying? People just aren't consistent for long durations of time. And that's like 10 months. So I think I say all that to say I realize you can't talk people out of it. I think when I see the it factor in people, I try to make sure to affirm in them that they have the it factor, right? So that they don't put down the gift that they have. But I do not try to convince people who don't have a gift or a gift that I can't see to pretend they have a gift. Does that make sense? Right? It's a little harsh. That's why I'm not a pastor yet. Someday I think I'll be.
Right.
Yeah. Always wanted to have a church that's self-sustaining. So many of these churches like have to raise money, and it gives them a bad connotation. I'll pay for when I'm a pastor. I'll pay for it all.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Not through. I don't care if you can come in and not tithe, but that's your own damn problem. Tithing ain't for me. It's for you. You get what I'm saying? That's the type of church I wanted to run in.
And we're documenting the journey.
Documenting the journey, yeah. But that really screws up a lot of pastors. It really does.
I've seen it.
It does two things. One is, I don't want to ask for money, and they run these churches into the damn ground. A lot of pastors have zero financial ability, so they run churches into the ground. And then the other pastors build huge churches, like the Furdicks, who I love, and Joel Osteen, and everybody, T.D. Jakes, who I love these people. These are like my favorite. Those are my favorite three. And they build these big churches, change all these lives, and then you have to deal with the bad connotation that comes from it. Even though Joel Osteen probably makes 100% of his money from books. Guy's a book machine.
I think he does some real estate too.
Yeah, I think they did some by accident. And not by accident, but like, yeah.
As we go, yeah.
The church will be called Tithe or Don't Tithe. I don't care.
It's an interesting church.
No, I would never call it that, but you get the idea. So yeah, I try to pull the gift that's in people, or make sure that people don't put down the gift that's in them, but I do not try to convince people that they have a gift that I can't see?
Okay.
Good question.
I think I'm.
If there was anything at all that you liked in that video, you're welcome. If there's anything you didn't like, blame Marcos. But either way, like, subscribe, comment, whatever suits you.